Hey guys, welcome back to Self-Care Haven. I'm excited to announce that my book actually made Kindle's best-selling list for women's personal growth. So I encourage you to check it out. I'm going to be posting a link to it below, both the Kindle and the print version, and I hope you'll read it soon. So to go on to today's video, today we're going to be talking about racial microaggressions. Now, what are racial microaggressions? Well, they don't have to be necessarily blatantly aggressive. They're actually very subtle. They can be behavioral, verbal, nonverbal interactions where racial inequalities, stereotypes, and tensions are perpetuated and reinforced. Um, so to clarify what I mean, I'll be giving some examples from my own personal experience as a South Asian woman and of someone who's struggling with a very bad hair day. Forgive me. Um, so, as a South Asian woman, I've experienced a lot of racial microaggression in my day. I've actually been told by two people that I look like Mindy Kaling. No, I don't look like Mindy Kaling. Okay. Mindy Kaling is a wonderful, amazing comedian, and I adore her. However, telling me that I look like, the one mainstream South Asian woman, unfortunately, sadly, on American media, is basically telling me that you have a very limited representation of what South Asian women look like. You are taking away something that you've seen on television and imposing that on every South Asian woman you meet. And that is just not cool, bro. That's problematic. And why is that problematic? It's problematic because it goes back to the philosophy that, oh, you guys just look all the same. Hello, what can be more problematic than that, right? And I'm not saying that to commit a racial microaggression you have to be from a certain race. You can actually be from, a minority group and still make that same microaggression. The people who commit these microaggressions aren't necessarily people who come from backgrounds of power. They might actually be, from backgrounds of powerlessness. However, they still have this stereotype in their heads about certain ethnic groups and minorities, even though they themselves have suffered as a minority. And that's what I find even more problematic is that, I mean, not to say that if you're from a certain race it makes it okay. It doesn't, but it makes it problematic to me that you are someone who's experienced these racial microaggressions yourself, most likely, and yet you yourself are committing these racial microaggressions against others. So that's something you have to really learn how to acknowledge and unravel and understand. And I find that it all goes back to this illusion of categorizing. Human beings have this need to categorize. And I think that a lot of people, when they ask you, what is your ethnicity, where do you come from, or they might even label you, like I've had so many people, a really gross amount of people tell me, oh, you're Indian, right? And they just assume that I'm Indian, which, by the way, I'm actually not Indian. And so you don't know what I am, so don't freaking come up to me, a complete stranger, and say, hey, I know what you are. Don't categorize me, and if you want to know, you can ask. But it's still not your right to know. You know what I mean? I'm a complete stranger, and this again goes back to the dynamic of street harassment that I was talking about in the earlier videos. As you can see, I have a problem when it comes to these problematic interactions between strangers because I really think there's a boundary issue with interacting with especially women, but strangers in general. They will just say the most weirdest, the rudest stuff to you, and they just act like they have a right to know your personal business. Um, Anyways, I'm kind of going off track here. I want to go back to the idea of racial microaggressions because it's very important and close to my heart and should be close to all of our hearts. Um, when people stereotype you, when people assume things about you because of your race, your ethnicity, or they assume your race or ethnicity, that can be considered a racial microaggression because They are basically associating you and identifying you and labeling you based on their own limited representations and assumptions. And that's reinforcing really dangerous stereotypes. And those stereotypes are already ingrained in society, so we don't need more people rehashing the same stereotypes over and over again, because then it's going to become a problem that's never going to get fixed. So the way to confront it, the way to really stop enabling this type of behavior, is to own it in yourself. If you have any racial stereotypes of your own, if you have any microaggressions that you've committed, own up to it, learn from it. If you see other people committing racial microaggressions, either against you or somebody else, challenge them, call them out on it, make fun of them, kind of put the spotlight on them and what they're saying, and create a dialogue, create a discourse, a reverse discourse, because otherwise you're never going to get that change and that revolution that needs to happen. Otherwise you're never going to unravel the subtleties behind what they're saying and doing and behaving, and why it's really problematic to society. When people ask me, if I'm Indian, when people ask me why I don't have an accent, when people comment on why I speak English so fluently, those are all racial microaggressions that have to do with some assumptions, some crazy assumptions they have, based on just how I look. And that is just so problematic and so dangerous. And by the way, I was an English major, and I probably speak English better than you. And so whoever asks me that, that's exactly my response. Whenever I think of it in my head, I'm like, please, I speak English better than you, probably. So don't even question why I speak English so fluently. Please don't. I just don't. Um, but anyways, back to the main point. Uh, you really have to be careful with racial microaggressions, because they add up, and they end up reinforcing the same inequalities that we're really trying hard to fight in this so-called post-race society, which I really don't believe in. By the way, I really don't believe we've moved past this construct of race. I think that it's still there and it's still haunting us in all of these daily interactions. So the first move to kind of challenge these racial tensions and these racial inequalities is to call people out, tell them, hey, don't stereotype me, and, give the question back to them. If they're in a position of privilege and power, and, they don't necessarily have the stereotype attached to them, ask them, oh, you speak English well too, and give them a note of surprise. Throw them back a little bit with your satirical tone, and have some fun with it. Make sure they know that, you're not really trying to attack them, you're just kind of devaluing the microaggression that's reinforcing the stereotype that's so dangerous to society. So challenge it every day within yourself, with others, create a dialogue with others about it. This is really an opportunity. I feel like racial microaggressions are an opportunity to really speak about what's problematic in society, what society thinks is the norm, and to constantly challenge and rebel against it. If the next time someone labels you as something, question them about it. Let's say, what right do you have to know and to categorize me, and what right do you have to label me? You don't know where I am, where I come from. And show them who's boss, because you are the owner of your identity, and you shouldn't be categorized by other people's labels on you. So just some thought for the day, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it makes you think twice about your own beliefs, about your interactions with others, and perhaps the racial microaggressions that you've encountered in your life, which you weren't able to identify before this video. I hope you've become more aware of them now, and I hope that it helps you to challenge some of these in the future. I hope this video really helps in some way, and I hope we can start a revolution that unravels how problematic these microaggressions can really be, because they can add up to something really big.